When a woman chooses attention over respect, it doesn't happen in one dramatic moment. It happens slowly, quietly, almost invisibly. At first, it feels harmless. A compliment here, a message there, someone noticing her, admiring her, making her feel seen. And there is nothing wrong with wanting to feel appreciated. Every human being craves connection. Every heart wants to feel valued. The problem begins when that craving becomes a weakness, when validation from others becomes more important than dignity within. Attention is loud, respect is silent. Attention shows up in words that sound sweet, but have no weight behind them. Respect shows up in actions that remain even when no one is watching. Attention claps for you when you walk into the room. Respect stands beside you when the room turns against you. But because attention feels exciting and respect feels ordinary, many women mistake noise for love and compliments for commitment. A woman who chooses attention over respect starts measuring her worth by how many people want her, not by how deeply someone values her. She feels powerful when eyes follow her, when messages keep coming, when someone says, "You're different," or "I've never met anyone like you." Yet deep inside, there is insecurity because attention is temporary. The same people who admire today can disappear tomorrow. And when attention fades, self-worth collapses with it. Respect doesn't always feel thrilling. Sometimes it feels boring. Respect asks for patience. It asks for boundaries. It asks for self-control. Attention asks for none of these things. Attention says, "Do whatever you want, just keep me entertained." Respect says, "Be who you truly are, even if it costs you popularity." That is why attention is easy to choose, and respect is hard to earn. Many women tolerate disrespect simply because it comes wrapped in attention. A man who flirts but never commits. Friends who praise publicly but undermine privately. Social circles that celebrate beauty but ignore character. And slowly, the standard drops. What once felt unacceptable starts feeling normal. What once hurt now feels expected. And she tells herself, "At least I'm not invisible." But being visible without being valued is not empowerment. It is emotional poverty. Attention feeds the ego, respect feeds the soul. Ego feels good in the moment, but it leaves you empty later. Soul fulfillment doesn't shout, it whispers. Respect protects your peace. Attention steals it. When respect is present, you don't have to constantly prove yourself. You don't have to perform. You don't have to beg for consistency. You are seen, heard, and considered. When attention is present without respect, you are constantly anxious, wondering when the messages will stop, when the tone will change, when you will be replaced. A woman who chooses attention over respect often confuses desire with love. She thinks being wanted means being valued. But desire is selfish, it wants something from you. Respect is selfless, it wants something for you. Desire asks, "What can I get?" Respect asks, "What do you need?" And this confusion leads her into relationships where she is admired but not protected, pursued but not prioritized, desired but not cherished. Over time, this choice erodes self-respect. Boundaries become flexible. Standards become negotiable. She laughs at jokes that hurt her. She accepts behavior she would never advise her sister or daughter to tolerate. She stays silent to avoid losing attention. And the tragedy is not that others disrespect her. The tragedy is that she begins to disrespect herself. Choosing attention over respect also affects how she shows up in the world. Decisions are made to impress rather than to align. Clothes, words, actions all become tools to stay relevant instead of expressions of authenticity. She becomes a version of herself that attracts applause but feels disconnected from her truth. And no matter how much attention she gets, there is always a hunger for more, because attention never satisfies, it only distracts. Respect, on the other hand, builds slowly but lasts long. It comes from consistency, values, and self-worth. It grows when a woman says no to what dishonors her, even if it means standing alone. It grows when she walks away from situations that offer excitement but steal dignity. Respect is choosing peace over popularity, depth over drama, and long-term fulfillment over short-term pleasure. A wise woman understands this difference. She understands that being alone with self-respect is far better than being surrounded by attention that costs her dignity. She understands that the right people may be fewer, but they will be real. They will not just admire her beauty or charm. They will honor her boundaries, support her growth, and protect her emotional well-being. The moment a woman stops chasing attention and starts demanding respect, everything changes. Relationships shift. Some people leave, and that is not a loss, it is clarity. Because anyone who only stays for attention was never meant to stay for life. Respect filters people. Attention collects them. In the end, attention fades, applause dies, and validation disappears. But respect stays. It becomes the foundation of confidence, peace, and self-worth. And the woman who learns this lesson early doesn't need the world to tell her she matters. She already knows. Ignoring red flags and calling it love is one of the most dangerous emotional habits a woman can develop, because it disguises self-betrayal as loyalty. Red flags rarely arrive with sirens and warnings. They arrive softly, dressed as charm, excuses, or temporary mistakes. At first, they seem small enough to ignore, a harsh tone justified as stress, disrespect explained away as honesty, absence defended as being busy. And because the heart wants connection more than clarity, the mind becomes very creative in finding reasons to stay. A woman doesn't ignore red flags because she doesn't see them. Most of the time, she sees them very clearly. She feels them in her gut. She notices the inconsistency, the lack of accountability, the emotional unavailability. But instead of trusting that inner voice, she silences it. She tells herself she is overthinking. She tells herself that love requires patience. She tells herself that everyone has flaws. And slowly, intuition is replaced by justification. Love, in its healthiest form, brings peace, not confusion. It brings safety, not anxiety. But when red flags are present, love starts to feel like walking on eggshells. You measure your words. You minimize your needs. You avoid difficult conversations because you're afraid of pushing the person away. And then you call this sacrifice. You call this understanding. You call this love. But love does not require you to abandon yourself. One of the most common red flags women ignore is inconsistency. Words sound beautiful, but actions don't match. Promises are made but rarely kept. Apologies come without change. Yet hope convinces her that potential matters more than reality. She falls in love with what could be, not with what is. And potential is a dangerous thing to love because it keeps you invested in a future that may never arrive. Another red flag is disrespect disguised as humor or honesty. Hurtful comments followed by, "I was just joking," or "I'm just being real." When something wounds you and you're told you're too sensitive, that's not love, it's emotional invalidation. But instead of recognizing it, she adjusts herself. She laughs it off. She doubts her own feelings. And each time she does, she teaches others how to treat her. Fear plays a huge role in ignoring red flags. Fear of being alone, fear of starting over, fear of wasting time. So she stays thinking endurance equals devotion. She believes that if she loves hard enough, understands deeply enough, sacrifices long enough, things will change. But love is not a rehabilitation center. You cannot heal someone who refuses to acknowledge their behavior. And staying in hope can be far more damaging than living in truth. Calling red flags love also comes from romanticizing struggle. Society often glorifies toxic relationships as passionate, intense, and meaningful. Calm is labeled boring, stability is mistaken for lack of chemistry, and chaos is mistaken for depth. So when love feels turbulent, dramatic, and emotionally exhausting, it is seen as proof that it is real. But real love does not drain you, it strengthens you. Over time, ignoring red flags trains the heart to tolerate pain. What once felt unacceptable slowly becomes normal. Emotional neglect becomes routine. Broken trust becomes familiar, and the line between love and suffering blurs. She no longer asks, "Is this healthy?" She only asks, "How do I make this work?" And in doing so, she loses sight of herself. The most tragic part is that while she is busy defending someone's behavior, she is abandoning her own needs. She becomes more patient with disrespect than she is protective of her peace. She fights for a relationship harder than she fights for her self-worth. And every ignored red flag becomes a silent message to herself that her feelings are less important than keeping someone close. Red flags are not punishments, they are information. They are life's way of offering clarity before deeper damage occurs. Ignoring them doesn't make them disappear, it only makes the consequences heavier. Love is not about proving how much pain you can endure. It is about mutual care, growth, and responsibility. A woman who learns to recognize this understands that walking away from red flags is not giving up on love, it is choosing it. It is choosing a love that doesn't require excuses, justifications, or self-silencing. It is choosing a love where intuition is trusted, boundaries are respected, and peace is not negotiable. When she stops calling red flags love, she starts calling them what they are, warnings. And that awareness alone can save her years of heartbreak, confusion, and emotional exhaustion. True love never asks you to ignore your inner voice. It listens to it with you. Sacrificing self-respect to save a relationship often begins with good intentions. A woman tells herself she is being patient, understanding, and mature. She believes that love means adjusting, compromising, and sometimes staying silent for the sake of peace. And compromise, when mutual, is healthy. But when compromise turns into self-erasure, it stops being love and starts becoming slow, emotional damage. At first, the sacrifices seem small. She lets a disrespectful comment slide to avoid an argument. She ignores a broken promise because she doesn't want to seem demanding. She lowers her expectations because she fears being labeled difficult. Each time, she convinces herself that the relationship matters more than the discomfort. What she doesn't realize is that every ignored boundary quietly teaches the other person that her limits are flexible and her feelings are optional. Self respect is not loud, it doesn't scream. It shows up in the quiet decision to walk away from what dishonors you. When a woman sacrifices it, she slowly loses her voice. She stops expressing what hurts her because past experiences have taught her that speaking up leads to conflict, dismissal, or guilt tripping, so she chooses silence. And silence over time becomes a habit that eats away at confidence. Many women stay in unhealthy relationships because they confuse endurance with loyalty. They believe that staying, even when it hurts, proves depth of love. Leaving feels like failure, but staying in a place where you are repeatedly disrespected is not loyalty, it is self-neglect. Love should never require you to shrink so someone else can remain comfortable. One of the biggest reasons women sacrifice self-respect is fear of abandonment. The thought of being alone feels heavier than the pain of being mistreated. So she tolerates behavior she knows is wrong. She stays where she feels unseen, unappreciated, and emotionally unsafe. And over time, her loneliness exists even inside the relationship. She is no longer alone physically, but she is deeply alone emotionally. Saving the relationship becomes the priority, even if it means losing herself. She apologizes for things that aren't her fault. She accepts blame to keep the peace. She takes responsibility for someone else's behavior, and in doing so, she carries emotional weight that was never meant to be hers. The relationship survives, but her self-worth doesn't. There is a quiet exhaustion that comes from constantly choosing someone else over yourself. It shows up as anxiety, resentment, and emotional numbness. She starts questioning her value. She wonders if she is asking for too much when all she wants is basic respect. She doubts her instincts. And the more she doubts herself, the more power she gives away. Sacrificing self-respect also distorts how love is understood. Love becomes conditional, something that must be earned by tolerating pain. She believes that if she just gives more, tries harder, and stays longer, things will change. But people do not change because someone sacrifices themselves. They change when they are held accountable, and without boundaries, there is no accountability. The hardest truth is that some relationships are only sustained by one person's silence. The moment she speaks her truth, the relationship shakes, and that alone reveals the problem. A healthy relationship can withstand honesty. It can handle discomfort. It grows through communication. If speaking up threatens the relationship, then the relationship was never safe to begin with. Choosing self-respect does not mean choosing selfishness. It means choosing honesty. It means recognizing that love without respect is not love, it is attachment. It means understanding that no relationship is worth losing your dignity. Because once self-respect is gone, even love loses its meaning. A woman who reclaims her self-respect learns to value herself enough to walk away from what depletes her. She understands that being alone with peace is far better than being together in pain. She learns that her worth is not measured by how much she can endure, but by how well she can protect her emotional well-being. Saving a relationship should never require destroying yourself. The moment a woman realizes this, she stops begging for love and starts demanding respect. And that shift alone changes everything. Listening to everyone except yourself is a slow and subtle way of losing your identity. It doesn't happen overnight. It begins with doubt, doubt in your own judgment, doubt in your feelings, doubt in your ability to make the right decisions. And when that doubt takes root, outside voices become louder than your inner one. Advice starts replacing intuition, and approval starts replacing self-trust. A woman who listens to everyone except herself is often praised as sensible, obedient, and flexible. She is told she is easy to guide and open-minded, but beneath that praise is a dangerous pattern. She has learned to value external opinions more than her own inner truth. Every decision becomes a committee meeting. Friends, family, society, social media, everyone gets a vote except her heart. This happens because trusting yourself requires courage. It means accepting responsibility for your choices. It means risking mistakes and standing alone when others disagree. Listening to others feels safer. If things go wrong, blame can be shared. They told me to do this. Everyone said it was right. And slowly, personal accountability is replaced by collective approval. When a woman ignores her inner voice, she begins to live a borrowed life. Her choices are influenced by what looks acceptable, not what feels aligned. She studies what others expect her to want. She measures success by comparison instead of fulfillment. And because she is living someone else's version of happiness, satisfaction always feels just out of reach. Her intuition doesn't disappear, it gets quieter. Each time she ignores it, it retreats a little more. The discomfort she feels is dismissed as fear or negativity. The excitement she feels is labeled impractical. Over time, she stops checking in with herself altogether. She becomes skilled at adapting, but disconnected from her desires. Listening to everyone else also creates inner conflict. Different people give different advice. One voice says stay, another says leave. One says be patient, another says be bold. And because she has no strong inner anchor, she feels pulled in all directions. Confusion becomes constant. Decision-making becomes exhausting. Even simple choices feel heavy because she no longer trusts her own judgment. Society plays a powerful role in this. Women are often taught to be agreeable, accommodating, and considerate of others' opinions. Saying no is seen as rude. Following your own path is labeled selfish. So she learns to suppress her instincts, to keep peace. But peace built on self-silencing is not peace. It is quiet resentment. Social media amplifies this problem. Everyone seems to know how life should be lived. Perfect relationships, perfect careers, perfect routines. And instead of asking herself what she wants, she asks what she should want. Her self-worth becomes tied to trends, likes, and validation. The more she listens outward, the more lost she feels inward. Ignoring yourself also affects relationships. She accepts advice that doesn't match her reality. She stays or leaves based on others' experiences, not her own feelings. And when things go wrong, she feels disconnected from the outcome because the decision was never fully hers. This creates regret, not because the choice was wrong, but because it wasn't authentic. Listening to yourself doesn't mean ignoring wisdom from others. Guidance can be valuable, perspective can help, but there is a difference between considering advice and surrendering authority over your life. A woman who listens to herself uses others' opinions as information, not instruction. She filters advice through her values, her experiences, and her emotional truth. Reclaiming your inner voice is uncomfortable at first. It requires silence. It requires honesty. It requires sitting with feelings instead of drowning them out with opinions. And it requires accepting that not everyone will understand your choices. But understanding is not required for alignment. A woman who learns to listen to herself becomes grounded. She may still seek advice, but she decides. She may still make mistakes, but they are hers. And because they are hers, she learns faster, grows stronger, and becomes more confident. When you listen to yourself, you stop outsourcing your happiness. You stop asking for permission to live your life. You stop explaining your choices to people who don't live with their consequences. And in that quiet self-trust, clarity begins to grow. The most powerful voice you will ever hear is your own. When a woman learns to trust it, she stops drifting and starts living with intention. Confusing kindness with weakness is a mistake that costs a woman deeply, because kindness is one of the most powerful traits a human being can possess. Yet when it is unprotected, it becomes a doorway for exploitation. Kindness, in its true form, comes from strength, empathy, and emotional intelligence. Weakness comes from fear. But when a woman doesn't know the difference, she ends up giving endlessly to people who have no intention of giving back. A kind woman often believes that being understanding will make others treat her better. She listens more, forgives faster, and excuses behavior that shouldn't be excused. She sees potential where others see responsibility. And while her intentions are pure, her kindness slowly becomes an invitation for disrespect. People begin to assume she will always adjust, always forgive, always stay. Weakness is not kindness, but people who lack integrity often pretend not to know the difference. They test boundaries to see how much they can take. They push a little, then a little more. And when there are no consequences, they keep going. The kind woman tells herself she is choosing peace. But what she is really choosing is avoidance. Avoidance of conflict, rejection, or discomfort. One of the saddest realities is that kindness without boundaries does not inspire gratitude, it invites entitlement. The more she gives, the more others expect. Her efforts are no longer appreciated, they are assumed. And when she finally says no, she is labeled selfish, cold, or changed. This is the price of being kind to the wrong people. A woman who confuses kindness with weakness often feels guilty for having needs. She feels uncomfortable asking for help. She overextends herself emotionally, mentally, and sometimes financially. And when she finally feels exhausted, she blames herself for being too sensitive, instead of recognizing that her kindness was being misused. There is a difference between being kind and being available. Kindness is a choice. Availability without limits is a sacrifice. A kind woman chooses when and how she gives. A weak position forces her to give even when it hurts. When she doesn't protect her energy, she teaches others that her well-being is negotiable. This confusion often begins early in life. Many women are taught that being nice makes them lovable, that being accommodating keeps relationships intact, that anger, firmness, or refusal makes them difficult. So they learn to swallow discomfort and smile through disrespect. But kindness that costs you your voice is not kindness. It is self-abandonment. People respect clarity more than compliance. A woman who stands firm in her values may be less liked, but she is more respected. A woman who says yes to everything may be liked temporarily, but she is rarely valued. Respect grows where boundaries exist. Without boundaries, kindness loses its meaning. Confusing kindness with weakness also affects how she treats herself. She becomes kinder to others than she is to her own needs. She justifies mistreatment, but criticizes herself harshly. She gives patience to those who hurt her, but offers little compassion to her own exhaustion. And slowly, resentment builds, not because she is unkind, but because she has been unfair to herself. True kindness includes self-respect. It knows when to give and when to step back. It knows that saying no can be an act of love. Love for yourself and for others. Because boundaries teach people how to treat you. They protect relationships from becoming one-sided. A woman who learns the difference between kindness and weakness becomes powerful in a quiet way. She remains compassionate, but she is no longer easily manipulated. She listens, but she does not tolerate disrespect. She forgives, but she does not forget patterns. Her kindness becomes intentional, not automatic. When kindness is paired with strength, it commands respect. It no longer drains her, it fulfills her. And the people who truly value her will stay, not because she gives endlessly, but because she gives wisely. Keenness should never be a reason someone crosses your boundaries. It should be a reflection of your values, not an excuse for others to mistreat you. When a woman understands this, she stops shrinking and starts standing firmly in who she is.